The camera
Oh,
down, so it's not a big whiteboard and then my head way down on there. Good morning, good morning, good morning. October, what do we have?
yeah.
When last we met, we're about to talk about Julian the Apostate. I'm on page 96. How Julian became an apostate. Julian was the youngest son of Julius Constantius, the half-brother of Constantine the Great. In the general massacre of the younger line of the Flavian family, the family of Constantine, who was called Flavius Constantius, after the death of Constantine, Julian was spared because of his extreme youth. Who was massacring them? I don't know. Does anyone know this history? Why is no one on camera? Come on. Come to school, please. Nothing else.
My camera isn't working.
Working yesterday morning.
It didn't turn on. I never had it on yesterday morning.
Alice, come to school, please. The remembrance of the murder of his fathers and brothers, a remembrance which his pagan tutor Mardonius took care to keep alive, caused Julian to hate Christianity, the faith professed by the perpetrators of these wrongs. Therefore, though instructed in the Christian religion and baptized, he readily accepted the heathen philosophy of his teacher. Grown to manhood, he pursued his studies in Athens, where he openly joined the Neoplatonic school of philosophers, which was notorious for its opposition to Christianity. In 355, he was summoned to Milan to assume the rank of Caesar and the command of the armies of Gaul and Italy. Then he becomes emperor. Julian was successful in his war against the Franks and the Alemanni, who had invaded the Gallic provinces. In addition to displaying unexpected capacities as a general, he showed himself a forceful and upright administrator, and thereby won the admiration of the people of the army. So Julian is the nephew of Constantine the Great. Therefore, when Constantius ordered away his best troops to serve against the Persians, all his soldiers revolted and proclaimed Julian emperor in April 360. With 3,000 picked troops, he set out for Constantinople. On the way, he heard of the sudden death of Constantius. He immediately proclaimed himself both emperor and pagan, sacrificed to the god, and ordered the dismantled pagan temples to be rebuilt in 360 in Rome. These measures were soon followed by more drastic ones. He forbade the Christians to teach classical literature in their schools, forced them to surrender many pagan shrines which they had occupied, deprived the clergy of their immunities, and stimulated a literary war against Christianity, in which he himself took a prominent part. Now, this is all because his family was betrayed and killed. I don't know the history of this, but all his family was killed, and he thinks it was by the Christians, or it was by those who professed themselves Christians but did something wrong. And so now he's making war on all of Christianity in retaliation. He next attempted to combat Christianity with its own weapons and tried to establish a universal pagan church with a clergy and liturgy on the Christian model. Sound familiar? Anyone? He also sought to vitalize paganism by infusing into it the morality and missionary zeal of Christianity, but all his efforts were to no avail. Paganism in any form had lost its appeal for the masses, and the only converts were those who sought the imperial favor by abandoning the Christian religion. 2 years later, Julian went to war with the Persians establishing at Antioch his base of campaign. While here he thought to confute the prophecy of Christ by rebuilding the Temple of Jerusalem. The attempt was a failure. So Jerusalem fell in when? The Temple of Jerusalem was destroyed in
70 AD.
70 AD, and has it ever been rebuilt?
No.
How many attempts have there been to rebuild it? Several, like probably dozens. So in 362, he's trying, but our Lord prophesied that it would never be rebuilt. Whilst the work of laying the foundation was in progress, relates the pagan history, Memmius Marcellinus, fearful globes of fire bursting forth repeatedly from the earth, close to the foundations, scorched the workmen and rendered the place, after frequent trials on their part, quite inaccessible. Sounds like a volcano eruption or something like that. After long preparations, Julian began his attack on the Persians early in 363. After some notable successes, he was compelled to retreat. On the march up the Tigris Valley, he was mortally wounded in a skirmish with the Persian cavalry. As he was falling from his horse and saw the blood spurting from the wound, he is said to have exclaimed, "Thou hast conquered, O Galilean." Theodoret was the historian there. With his death, the pagan interlude came to an end. From Julian to Justinian, the extinction of paganism. Under Julian's successor, the mild and prudent Jovian, Christianity was reestablished as the religion of the empire, and the Labarum of Constantine again became the standard of the army. Against the pagans, however, no measures of repression were enacted. The same policy was pursued by Jovian's successors, Valentinian I in the west, and his brother Valens in the east. So now we're in the mid, going into the late 300s. Under the following emperors, energetic steps were again taken for the complete suppression of paganism. Gratian refused to wear the insignia of the Pontifex Maximus as unbefitting a Christian. He removed the altar of the goddess of victory from the Senate house in spite of the remonstrances of the pagan members of the Senate, forbade legacies of real property to the Vestal virgins, and abolished all the privileges of the heathen priests. Theodosius the Great, this is at the end of the 300s, a highly cultured, thoroughly Christian ruler who toward the end of his life for the last time united all the provinces of the empire under one scepter, forbade all pagan sacrifices and ordered all the temples throughout the world to be closed forever. The Catholic faith was declared to be the faith of the empire and no other was to be tolerated. Paganism celebrated a short-lived triumph in the West when the young Emperor Valentinian II was murdered at the instigation of Arbogast, a Frankish officer in the Roman army, and the pagan grammarian Eugenius was set up instead. After a reign of 2 years, Eugenius was defeated by Theodosius and slain by his own soldiers near Aquileia in North Italy. Arbogast committed suicide. From this time on, paganism steadily declined. In the year 423, the Emperor Theodosius II declared that there were hardly any pagans left in his dominions. So as we were talking about yesterday, not that they were persecuted, that is, murdered, but suppressed. The Emperor Justinian the Great, this is 527, so we just fast forwarded a couple hundred years, took away all civil rights from the unbaptized, and in 529 closed the philosophical schools of Athens, the last stronghold of paganism. In the remote country districts, the ancient gods were, however, still worshipped for a century or more. The last pagans were converted on the Isle of Sardinia and Corsica through the efforts of Pope Gregory the Great. So it only took 500 years, but basically we have a Catholic world. A Catholic world. And that's a good thing, because everybody is meant to be Catholic, because everybody is meant to save their soul. And the only way you can save your soul is through the Catholic Church. Right? Mm-hmm. The Church and the Christianization of the empire. It is evident that the imperial edicts in favor of the Christian religion and the continued efforts of the emperors to discourage and suppress paganism were largely responsible for the rapid Christianization of the empire. Yet no one who knows history of this period will ascribe the expansion of Christianity to these causes alone. The untiring zeal of the bishops and of other holy and learned men, the pure and devout lives which so many of the faithful exhibited, and the manifest truth and beauty of the Christian religion itself were far more efficient motives of all honest and sincere pagans for joining the church than all the pressure brought to bear on them by the secular power. So we just went through the history of how the state contributed to Christianity becoming the religion of the empire. But that's only the groundwork. Okay, we haven't talked about the monasteries, we haven't talked about the holy bishops, we haven't talked about the schools, we haven't talked about the Christians themselves who were moral and who were living good lives and who influenced the lives of those around them. That's where the rubber meets the road. So we had to paint the groundwork first of what the state was doing to allow all of it to happen. But now let's look at the rest of how the world became Catholic. It may be justly doubted whether all the imperial laws put together were directly responsible for even one true conversion. The wholesale conversions affected by these laws created a gigantic problem for the church. She had to try to make true Christians of these pagans of yesterday. Such a work of regeneration could not be accomplished in a decade or two. It was hardly begun when it was interrupted by the barbarian invasions, which put an end to the Roman Empire in the West. The church was moreover hampered in her efforts by numerous religious controversies and heresies in her own fold, which taxed all her energies for more than 100 years. So just because the ground has now become fertile soil for Christianity, the seeds still have to be planted. The little plants need to be watered and tended and pruned and brought up and then harvested, right? It all takes a lot of time. But if on your farm where you've got this fertile soil and you're springing up countless little plants, if while that's going on, you've got raiders who come and pluck the plants right out or come and spread poison, and they're your own farm hands, you're going to have a hard time, first of all, cultivating your crop, and you're going to have problems trying to ward off those in your own house who are trying to wreck your harvest. You see what I'm saying? It's always something. If it's not persecution from without, it's heresy from within that gums up the works. Something humanly is always thwarting the divine. Thwart. The church was moreover hampered in her efforts by the numerous, and yet during all this time, she did not forget the task given to her by the divine founder of preaching the gospel to all nations. So here we go. We're going to explain, so we've only got 2 more pages of this, how the church spread despite the fact that it wasn't perfect. So we have Christianity in Persia, in Armenia, and in Abyssinia. I'm looking for a map in the book. There's a map on page 43. Can anyone find me Persia, Armenia, and Abyssinia? Well, Persia is it's just Asia, right?
Oh,
Well, there's Armenia heading back toward the Caspian Sea. You see it? I'm on page 43. Is everyone on page 43? No. If you look all the way to the east, you see the Black Sea. And if you follow the Black Sea from left to right, it dead ends into Armenia. There's Armenia. Where's Abyssinia? I see Constantinople on the west side of the Black Sea. I don't see Abyssinia.
Are they pretty close to each other?
Say it again.
Are they pretty close to each other?
I have no idea. I see Armenia. I see Babylon way down to the south and west. I don't see Abyssinia. The most dangerous enemies of the empire in the east were the Persians, who in the 4th century occupied all the lands between the Caspian Sea and the Euphrates. Okay, let's find the Caspian Sea. That's all the way to the right, all the way to the east, the Caspian Sea, to the Euphrates. Where's the Euphrates? Isn't that in Africa? In Egypt? Where's the Euphrates, Thomas? Help.
In the Middle East, next to Babylonia.
Near Babylonia. Okay. So look at the Caspian Sea and go straight south. See Mesopotamia?
Mhm.
Okay. That's where the Persians are coming from. And they're obviously pushing west towards Rome. Okay. As well as the southeastern portion of Mesopotamia. In this vast domain, a number of flourishing Christian communities had been established in the course of the 3rd century. Mares, the first bishop of Seleucia, is said to have erected more than 300 churches. That's a lot of churches.
Yeah.
As long as the Christians were persecuted by the Roman emperors, they were left unmolested by the Persian kings. But when Constantius took to suppress paganism in his domains, a long and cruel persecution was begun against the Christians in those of his neighbor. Sapor II commanded all the Christians to worship the sun and to accept the religion of the King of Kings or pay with their lives for their madness. Bishop Simeon of Seleucia was the first victim. With him died nearly 100 of his priests. Then thousands of Christians of every age and condition were tortured and executed. This is by the Persians now, a different enemy. The Greek historian Zosimon says that the names of 16,000 Persian martyrs were on record in his day. By refinement of cruelty, those who denied the faith were compelled to be the executioners of those who remained faithful. But there were very few apostates. Ustazides, an aged courier, who in the moment of weakness had renounced his faith, afterwards repented and was immediately let off to death. As a last favor, he asked the executioner to proclaim publicly that he was suffering death not because he was a traitor to his country, but because he was a Christian. During the reign of Isdesgurdes the first, the Christians enjoyed a long period of peace. They were permitted to practice their religion openly and to rebuild their churches. The imprudent zeal of Abdus, bishop of Susa, who in 418 set fire to the temple of the sun god Ormuzd, was the signal for a second general persecution. Abdus was beheaded and thousands of Christians shared the same fate. Bahram V, this is in 420, was the most barbarous of all the Persian persecutors. His favorite manner of punishing the Christians was to have them sawed in pieces. Jacob Bethlapid, general of the Persians under Isdesgurdes, had bartered his faith for the royal favor. When the persecution of Bahram broke out, he boldly proclaimed himself a Christian and was ordered by the tyrant to have his arms and legs sawed off. He is known as the Megalomartyr, the great martyr of the Persians. During the reign of Bahram, the Nestorian heresy invaded Persia, found favor at court, and gradually perverted the Christian remnant from the true faith. I'm just looking at the map because I feel like I know that St. Paul got as far as Cappadocia. Did he go into Mesopotamia? Does anyone remember St. Paul in Mesopotamia? I don't remember if he got that far. I was just given by a friend of mine whose Catholic mom died. I was just given a couple books from the 1800s.
18?
From the 1800s. I will bring them next week.
Is that like 200 years ago?
At least I mean, over 150, yeah.
Wow.
And they're old but one of them, oddly, is a King James Bible from 1869, a King James Bible. That's a Protestant Bible. I have no idea why she had this antique, no idea. But I was looking through it, and in the back, it says something about resources for Bible teachers or something like that. And I'm telling you what, the lists of the types of food listed in the Bible, the types of plants listed in the Bible, there's all these wonderful things. And there is 2 or 3 maps of the missions of St. Paul. That's why I'm bringing it up. So I'm going to try to take a picture of that for you. And that would be good for us to, because I really want to know how far St. Paul got. How were these people Catholic is what I want to know, all the way in Persia. How were they Catholic? 300 churches were built, but before that, there were Christians everywhere. Armenia, the first Christian nation. So, okay, when I say Armenia, anyone have any thoughts? Armenia? You can see it on the map how far east it is. Armenia? No. Oh, Poland, those places. This is farther. This is going into Asia. There are Armenian Catholics who are being persecuted right now. But also, do you know what's coming? We had a mention of it in the character of this age. Do you know what's coming? Does anyone know what the Great Schism is? No? We're going to spend some time on it. St. Gregory, surnamed Illuminator, is the apostle of the Armenians. As a little child, he was saved by his nurse from the general massacre of the royal family of the Arsacids, to which he belonged, and educated in the Christian religion at Caesarea in Cappadocia. On his return to his native land in 286, he succeeded in converting King Tiridates III, most of the nobility and great numbers of people to the Christian faith. By royal decree, Christianity was declared the religion of the state. Thus, the honor of having been the first Christian nation belongs to the Armenians. The first Christian Catholic nation was Armenia. A rich Christian literature began to develop about the year 400 when Saint Mesrop invented the Armenian alphabet and translated the Bible and many Greek writings into the Armenian language. When the greater part of Armenia became a Persian province in the 5th century, the Armenians vigorously and successfully resisted every attempt to supplant Christianity with the fire worship, Purism of the Persians. Nestorianism tried in vain to gain entrance, but unfortunately, toward the end of the 5th century, the whole nation drifted into the monophysite heresy. The devil's going to get you one way or the other. If he can't get you on the one side, he'll get you on the other. The conversion of the Abyssinians. In the year 316, Meropius, a Christian philosopher of Tyre in Phoenicia, undertook a voyage of exploration along the coast of Africa. Well, that's why we couldn't find it. Abyssinia is Africa. In his company were 2 boys, Frumentius and Odysseus, whose education had been entrusted to him. The vessel was stranded on the coast of Abyssinia and attacked by a band of natives who slew all the travelers except them, whom they brought to the royal palace in Axum. Here the youths were not only treated kindly, but also given positions of trust at the court. They remained faithful to their religion, practiced it the best they could, and soon made conversions amongst the officials, and even in the household of the king. After the death of the sovereign, Frumentius was appointed regent of the realm by the queen, and instructor of her young son. Some years later, Odysseus returned to Tyre, where he entered the priesthood. About the same time, Frumentius went to Alexandria in Egypt in order to consult with St. Athanasius on the future of Christianity in Abyssinia. Athanasius was where? Anybody know? No, it was in Constantinople. It was decided that a bishop should be sent to that country, and as Athanasius insisted that no one was better fitted for this office than Frumentius himself, he received episcopal consecration and immediately returned to Axum to begin the work of organization and to continue the work of evangelization. He baptized King Azana and many of his subjects. Constantius tried in vain to win him over to the Arian heresy. Frumentius lived and died in the true faith and is numbered amongst the saints of the church. But the Abyssinians escaped one heresy only to fall into another. About 100 years after the death of their apostle, they adopted the monophysite, to which Alexandria and all Egypt had also succumbed. Cut off from the center of unity and orthodoxy and left by their political and geographical isolation and their own resources, they evolved in the course of the centuries that curious medley of Christianity, Judaism, paganism, and Mohammedanism, which is their religion today. All right, that's the end of that chapter. The church in conflict with heresy. We're going to stop here, but I'm trying to figure out what to tell you to do for tomorrow when I'm not here. You can read it back. I will send you the assignment for tomorrow. It's going to have to do with Arianism. Do you know what? Raise your hand if you've heard of Arianism.
Yeah.
Take 2 minutes and we'll start